Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us for Grants That Protect, Funding Opportunities for Justice, Public Safety, and Tribal Organizations. I'm Michael Paddock, CEO of Grants Office, and I want to welcome everyone to today's session. We've got a very good session for you today, lots of great information on justice and public safety and tribal organization funding. So before we get started, I want to very much thank our sponsor, Ingram Micro, for sponsoring today's session, making it possible for us to bring you this information, and for not just supporting this session, but actually a whole series of informational webcasts that we have been doing with Ingram. So very happy to be working with Ingram Micro on that. Thanks for their sponsorship. I also want to go over just a couple of housekeeping items as we look at the agenda. First of all, as many of you know, you can listen hands-free over your computer speakers or headphones. You know, we've been saying that for a long time. You don't have to dial in anymore. Maybe that's obvious in the age of Zoom. But nevertheless, if you do become disconnected, you can go to the menu at the top of your screen, audio and video menu, and select alternative ways to hear the audio portion of today's session if you are listening over your computer speakers or headphones and you find some issues there. Also, the session is being recorded and the replay will be available ostensibly at the same place where you registered for today's session. It'll be posted at about 45 minutes past the hour. Kate has already put the link into the chat. So if you're not on the chat, feel free to check that out. If you don't see the chat, I believe it's the little voice bubble at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. If you don't see that, you can go to the three dots to find that chat menu there. Using the three dots, you can also find the Q&A interface. So you can send questions in. Feel free to send in as many questions as you'd like, and we'll get to as many as we can over the course of today's session. So today we're going to be talking about justice, public safety, and tribal organization funding in the larger context of grants and funding generally. So we're going to start with a little bit of Grants 101. We're going to hear from one of our sponsors, Scientific, and hear about their public safety offerings and kind of some of the inroads they're making in terms of AI and public safety, how those two areas overlap. And then we'll talk about some of the sources of grant funding that are relevant specific to justice, public safety, and tribal funding. And then thoughts on funding technology projects, as well as some tips anyone can use to make your project proposal more successful. And then we'll hear from Ingram Micro, our sponsor for today, on their grant services program, the grant services that are being offered by Ingram Micro. So a lot of great information there. And then, as I mentioned, we'll cover whatever questions come in at the end. So feel free to send in as many questions as you'd like, and we'll get to as many as we can. I'm joined by a great group of panelists today, certainly knowledgeable in their respective fields. We've got Charlie Gonzalez, AI and public safety strategist, also a Juris Doctor and computer scientist at Scientific. Emily Nolan, senior program manager for grants at Ingram Micro. We've got Shannon Day, Senior Grants Development Consultant here at Grants Office, and Meghan Jacobsen, also a Grants Development Associate here at Grants Office. So couldn't have a better group of presenters today, and we're very happy to have all of you with us. Okay, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Charlie Gonzalez to talk to us a little bit about Scientific and the offerings that they have and where they're seeing overlap between technology and public safety. Charlie?
Hey, thank you, Michael. Hi, everyone. I'm Charlie Gonzalez, AI and public safety strategist at Scientific. As both a Juris Doctor and a computer scientist, I've seen firsthand how AI can reshape how justice is delivered and how communities stay safe. Today, I'll talk about how agencies can adopt scalable AI safely and affordably, and how Scientific's Verity AI platform helps makes that possible. The challenge. Public safety agencies today face a massive challenge. Too much data, not enough time. Officers spend hours reviewing footage. Dispatch centers are overloaded, and critical moments slip through. What if AI could cut through that noise, turning hours of video and sensor data into actionable intelligence. That's exactly what Verity AI does. Total visibility and actionable insights for safer communities. The solution, as mentioned, Verity AI, has a variety of business use cases for state, cities, and all sorts of agencies, whether they're local or even global. We offer secure, scalable AI platform that is built for justice and public safety. It deploys quickly, whether it's on the cloud, on the premise, or on edge, and it integrates with existing cameras, dispatch systems, and VMS tools. By applying multimodal AI, video, audio, text, and even behavioral cues, it is all delivered in real time for anomaly detection and for predicting behaviors. This cuts manual monitoring in more than half. And then it enables use cases like smart public spaces, intelligent transportation system, citywide actionable insights. And all of these mean that we can now onboard AI for fare evasion. We can now use AI for crowd counting, detecting behavior like loitering, or even supporting command centers with vehicle tracking, traffic optimization, and even coordinated responses. It is all about total visibility and faster, safer decisions. We begin by connecting agencies, businesses, and citizens. In our world, we like to think of two sort of groups of producers and citizens. Our citizens are our producers, and they can create all sorts of events. Meanwhile, our producers can also become citizens, but they can also be much more than that, right? They can also be the businesses, the operators, government agencies, and we bring both sides together from a producer and a citizen side. Beyond technology, Verity AI enables agencies to align with federal and state funding. We meet and exceed compliance and regulatory requirements, which means Verity AI can help any proposal with key boxes checking. For instance, we improve equity and community trust with AI governance. We can reduce response time, and we can promote data-driven collaboration across agencies. While our core is public safety, the same AI foundation supports justice, healthcare, corrections, and all sorts of different environments. Think mental health triage for patient monitoring, for medically imaging and diagnostics. It supports quality control in pharmaceutical manufacturing, patient monitoring for fall risks, behavioral health detection. All of these instances can go beyond just simple of public safety. It provides a broader vision. So when we look at Verity AI across cities and communities, it's about bridging the digital divide. This isn't about replacing people, it's about empowering them, giving first responders and public officials more context, faster decisions, and fewer blind spots. In short, Verity AI brings together the technology, security, and scalability that modern justice systems demand, helping agencies do more with less while keeping people safe. Thank you. If you are attending IACP 2025, please come see us at booth 4011. We are unveiling something big, which is our new precinct in an AI box. And it's a concept that brings all your AI powered tools together for live and forensic analysis. And it can be ready to deploy anywhere. I love to connect with anyone who is interested in more information. And thank you for the team here And now back to Michael.
Thanks very much. Thank you very much, Charlie. Great information, and we can't wait to see what that announcement is. It should be very exciting. Okay, I'm going to turn it over now to Shannon Day to talk to us a little bit about Grants 101. Kick us off. Shannon?
Thank you, Michael, and hello, everyone. It's great to be here today, and thank you for joining us. So, Grants 101. I want to kind of start at square one, the basics, by quickly defining what a grant is. Unfortunately, grants are not free money deposited into your account to be spent however you want. Instead of free money, kind of think of grants as an investment. It's an investment in your organization, in your project, and in the community that you serve. So, where do grants come from and who are the funders? Well, as you see on your screen, there are three main categories. There are federal funders, state funders, and foundation funders. The largest by far, in terms of overall funding available, comes from the federal government. We're up to about $700 billion annually available from the 26 different federal grant-making agencies. And these are offered through a variety of competitive grants, entitlement programs, pass-through grants, or cooperative agreements. So, federal grants, while they do offer the most funding, they also tend to be the most competitive because they draw from a nationwide pool of competition, potentially. But again, in exchange for that, you do have larger award sizes. And again, the application process is often the most complex of the three families of grant funding. So, there are pros and cons with all grant programs, large award sizes, but complex application requirements. So, second down, the state agency funded opportunities tend to be a little less competitive because applicants are limited to that specific state, and they tend to be a little smaller. The funding amounts tend to be a little smaller in total. The award sizes tend to be a little smaller because they're limited to state budgets. So it really comes down to the state, how plentiful grants are. Some states may invest very, very heavily in public safety initiatives. Some states may not. This can also change depending on who the governor is. And I'm going to talk about federal grants in a minute. But to a lesser extent, state grants may vary depending on the administration in power at the state level. One governor may be very pro public safety, and the next governor says, no, I want to focus on education initiatives. So together, federal and state agencies make up what we call public grant funding, because the monies generated for these opportunities are public dollars, meaning the taxes that we pay. So these grants are only possible because of our taxes, and they are also subject to federal regulations because they are tax funded. Rounding out the available grant funding landscape are private grant funders. These can be corporations, families, individuals, shared interest, or community foundations. They really run the gamut as far as opportunities that exist. The award sizes can be in the thousands all the way up into the millions, depending on the program. So they really are varied, and they are equally varied in terms of competitiveness. So if you are new to grants, we always recommend starting out with foundations because you can kind of get your feet wet. They're a little low pressure. Again, they don't have those same restrictions as the taxpayer funded grants. So they're a little more approachable. They usually have a much easier application process. You can call them and talk to them. You can with all grant programs, but foundations, as I mentioned, they're a little more flexible. And they're able to turn funding around usually faster than state and federal agencies. So start local is what we always recommend. Look at your county's community foundation. Nearly every county in the country has a community foundation, or even smaller if your city or town has a foundation. Start with them, build relationships, etc. So as I mentioned, I did want to touch on federal funding and the federal funding landscape right now. There has been some disruption in federal grants this year, and it's important to understand why. Every new presidential administration, as I mentioned, governors as well, but every new presidential administration in the United States puts its mark on the federal budget and on grant programs and grant priorities, which often leads to changes in program focus, even if the overall purpose of the grant remains the same. So right now, many federal grant programs are still paused as agencies review their notices of funding opportunities, or NOFOs, to align their programs with the current administration's agenda. And we're seeing a clear focus so far on infrastructure, domestic manufacturing, technology innovation, especially in areas vital for national competition. And programs supporting law enforcement and border security are also very likely to remain strong. Conversely, areas that don't directly align with those core priorities, like the arts, humanities, environmental protection, certain scientific research, those programs are facing greater scrutiny and a more competitive funding landscape, with some even programs are being cut or reduced or even rescinded completely. So as you're probably aware, the federal fiscal year 2026 budget still has not been passed. The government is shut down right now. So the budget will be passed this fall, or at least it should be. Once that budget is finally passed, we will have a firmer grasp on where federal grant dollars will be going, where those program priorities will be. We already have a little bit of an idea based on the grants that have opened, but we will know for sure when we see that budget and when we're able to analyze that budget. But all of this said, please remember that grants are not going anywhere. So you want to stay motivated, be flexible, be prepared with a capital P, especially this year when grant application windows may only be open for a couple of weeks. So the more prepared you are, and Megan's going to talk about that a little bit more, the better. So as I mentioned, when a grant does open, you can kind of hit the ground running. So let's pivot to the types of grants. You want to realize that there are basically two kinds of grants when it comes to funding your tech projects. Grants created expressly to fund that technology or equipment, and everything else. So as you can see on that scale, the lever to the right is the everything else. Grants created expressly or exclusively for technology, those are pretty rare. Think of things like body-worn camera grants. Otherwise, grants are going to be neutral or friendly to technology. So if your organization is looking to fund something like license plate readers or digital forensics, you're going to have a pretty difficult time if you just Google grants for LPRs, because that's not in the title. It's not forward in the NOFO, because grants are mostly focused on the social benefits and outcomes rather than the methods or tools that your organization needs to reach those goals. So as you can see, what's far more common are grants considered technology friendly or neutral, meaning that the funder is going to be motivated to provide funding for your project based on the complete idea, like utilizing AI-enabled cameras for traffic enforcement, like detecting red light violations, speeding, or drivers not wearing seatbelts. Or another potential summary, our investigators can quickly sift through massive amounts of digital data, like phone records, email, social media, case files, etc., to find connections, map relationships between suspects, and identify key evidence more efficiently. So, as you can hear from both of those statements, it really doesn't talk about the tech a whole lot. It talks about what the tech is helping you do. So, most of these grants, as I mentioned, will fund technology as part of a more holistic solution. And ignoring those grants that don't pop up when you Google grants for X, Y, or Z, but those grants will absolutely fund it, that means you may be leaving opportunities on the table, and you don't want to do that. So what you want to do is think creatively to identify the grants that are out there. How can the tech you need fit in as just another tool in your toolbox to do the work you do, along with the other things you might need, like training or professional development or staffing, supplies, etc. So doing this will open the door to more grant opportunities and increase your chances of being funded. The thing you want to remember is that grant funders prioritize the outcome, not the tool. So while funders are absolutely willing, as I mentioned, to support the purchase or development of new technology, they want to know its purpose within the larger mission. And on your screen, we've provided some examples of those types of grant fundable projects that can use technology. Whether your project is for traffic safety, drug enforcement, violent crime reduction, improved victim services, corrections and reentry initiatives, school safety. Again, the technology you're requesting funding for is viewed strictly as a means to that end. So when applying for funding, your proposal must clearly articulate how a particular technology solution, be it AI software, new surveillance systems, enhanced data analytics, how those solutions will directly facilitate, expedite, or improve your core activities. Funders want to know the problem you're solving. How will the tech help you solve it more effectively than current methods? The technology should be presented not as an item for a shopping list, but as a critical strategic asset for achieving the grant stated purpose. And next, I'm going to provide 3 examples of grants that are technology friendly at the federal level. The first is the Edward Burr Memorial Justice Assistance Grant, or JAG. Many of you may be familiar with this. It is kind of the grant for criminal justice funding. Its main goal is to support a broad range of activities designed to prevent and control crime, to improve the overall criminal justice system. It is very flexible. It allows jurisdictions to direct funding toward their most pressing local needs, provided that those needs fall within the authorized purpose areas. JAG has not opened yet this year. As you can see on your screen, it's usually open around August. August has passed, but again, we are in a government shutdown. This is a statutory program, so it will be opening. We just don't know when. So, as I mentioned, preparation is key. It is a formula grant, so either states receive their formula funding, local municipalities and counties receive their formula funding, and this formula is based on population and the proportion of violent crime statistics. So in 2024, there were 9 funding categories. Many of these categories do not change from year to year, so I don't anticipate a lot of change in 2025. The categories are law enforcement programs, prosecution and courts, crime prevention and education, corrections and community corrections, drug treatment and enforcement, planning, evaluation, and technology improvement programs. As you can hear, very technology friendly, crime victim and witness programs, mental health programs, and implementation of state crisis intervention court proceedings. Those were the 2024 program areas. As I mentioned, we're waiting to see what 2025 is going to look like, but be prepared. Next, kind of I kind of think of this program as JAG for tribes. This is the Coordinated Tribal Assistance Solicitation, or CTAS, however you want to pronounce it. It's designed to improve public safety, justice systems, and victim services in tribal communities. So this is not one single grant program. It is a unified solicitation that gathers applications and opportunities from numerous DOJ funding offices, including the Office of Community-Oriented Policing, the Bureau of Justice Assistance, Office on Violence Against Women. There are a few funding offices that provide opportunities, but applicants apply through this one program. So it's kind of great. You're not having to apply to separate programs throughout the year. Anyway, the overarching goal is to enable tribes to develop a comprehensive and coordinated approach to their specific public safety, criminal justice, or victim issues. This approach helps DOJ better understand the tribe's overall needs and also makes life easier for the tribe. It's anticipated to open later this year. Usually it opens in early winter, usually December, January. That's when it opened last year. Hopefully that's when it will open this year. But again, be prepared. I also do want to note that tribal organizations can apply to nearly all grants. You're not restricted to those just focused on tribal initiatives. So by definition, no matter where you're located, your tribe is considered rural. So that opens up the possibilities for you. Beyond federal grants and state grants, you can also apply for grants that are focused on rural agencies as well. So keep that in mind. You're not limited to tribal opportunities. And finally, I want to talk about school safety with the COP School Violence Prevention Program. This is a competitive grant administered by the Department of Justice COPS office. Its primary goal is to improve security at K-12 schools and on school grounds, which also includes buses, PS, through the implementation of evidence-based school safety programs and technology. So law enforcement agencies can apply direct for this, as well as public K-12 school districts. And it provides funding for a range of activities. It's very technology friendly. Physical security, like metal detectors, access control, like door locks, fences, lighting, also technology like the expedited notification of law enforcement, so communications devices, panic buttons, mass notification systems, radios, video surveillance. I can go on, but you don't want me to. And it is very focused on coordination and collaboration. So if a law enforcement agency is applying, they must have a letter of support from the school district. So, school district or districts. If the district is applying, they must have a letter of support from the law enforcement agency, because the goal is that collaboration and coordination. And this program was authorized by the Stop School Violence Act of 2018. It is funded through 2028 through that act. So if you plan to apply, you may want to do it sooner rather than later. While this program is hugely popular and very competitive, we don't want to bet that it will be reenacted in 2028. So you may not want to apply for federal funding. It may be just too burdensome. It may, there are many reasons you may not want to apply for federal grants. So know that there are options. As I mentioned, there are state grants, there are foundation grants. State funding opportunities, whether those are federal pass-through grants or programs funded through the state budget, like the 3 examples on your screen are state budget grants. But I'm sure not everyone is from here is from Washington, Wisconsin, and Arkansas. So know that your state may offer grants for your needs as well. And a great place to start is looking at your state administering agency or administrative agency, depending on if it's Department of Justice or Department of Homeland Security. Pass-through grants like JAG, the State Homeland Security Grant Program, etc., are administered through those state agencies. So they are a great place for you to start because they may also administer state-funded programs. Many of these agencies have email subscription lists or listservs that you can sign up for, so you are notified as soon as a grant opens. Also, there are some states, unfortunately, there's not really a one portal like there is with grants.gov at the federal level. There's not one portal where you can look up state grants, but there are some states who do have a portal. California has one, Rhode Island, Illinois. Those are just off the top of my head. But check with your state, Google around. Even call up your state administering agency and they can give you ideas. And think more broadly, not just departments of public safety or homeland security or emergency services. Think about commerce, departments of commerce, Department of Education, Department of Transportation. Many of those attorneys general, I find state grants all the time in unusual places. So, broaden your search and broaden your scope. So with that, I am going to turn things over to Meghan, and she's going to provide you some valuable tips and tricks, as I mentioned, for getting your organization grant ready. Meghan?
Thank you so much, Shannon. So I am just going to take a little bit of time today to discuss some tips and tricks on becoming grant ready, selecting best fit grants for your organization, developing strong partnerships, and submitting competitive grant proposals. So first, let's start with the basics. Prior to even looking at grants, it's vital to take some basic steps towards grant readiness. It's going to take you a long way in your grant seeking journey. Here you see a checklist of essential tasks that you'll need to complete to get your organization ready to apply for grants. So first, you need to know your why. Going into the grant seeking process, you really need to have a solid understanding of why you're seeking funding. You shouldn't just go into the process simply because there's a budget shortfall within your organization. Instead, you need to know what needs or challenges that you're hoping to address through grant funding and how addressing those needs is going to further your organization's mission. Second, it's important to form an internal grants team. This should be made up of folks from across your organization, from upper management to finance to IT to the boots on the ground workers. This is not only going to ensure that you have organizational buy-in on seeking grant funding, but it also gives you a holistic view on what all is needed to implement a project. It's also going to allow you to break up tasks among a group of people to pull together an entire proposal, which can be a very large effort. Creating a grant seeking folder will help in avoiding last minute scrambles. So documents such as tax status, mission statement, financial documents, they're commonly required as part of a proposal. And having that in one place so that it's easily found is going to reduce a lot of stress when it comes time to submit a proposal. And then I have build a grant seeking calendar. This is going to give you and your team a visual of certain milestones that need to be met to stay on track, but it also ensures that everyone knows their role and upcoming deadlines, just to help you stay one step ahead in this process. And then finally, keep in mind that a UEI number or unique entity identifier number is required to apply for federal and some state grants. You can obtain this number by registering with sam.gov. So just know that this process takes a few weeks. So we always recommend completing it early as possible in this process. If your organization already has a UEI number, this is your reminder that they must be updated annually. So if you registered for one 3 years ago and you're going to apply for a grant, just plan ahead. You need to update that. And even if a UEI number isn't required, still check the guidance to see if there's any other type of registration that's required. Some states require a pre-approval process or to register with their own state level portal. So just know all those little details ahead of time. It's going to bring you a long way. So this is just kind of a visual of the timeline that the grants process might look like. It's also a basic starting point for a grants calendar. You'll see that this timeline, it starts 9 months out from the anticipated grant deadline. So this may seem excessive, and it may not always be necessary based on your organization's prior experience with grants or your capacity. However, I just want to illustrate that starting well ahead of time, and Shannon mentioned this as well, is best. This is especially true if you're partnering with another organization, as obviously that's going to involve keeping two different entities on track, which can be trickier. It's also important, as Shannon said, to keep in mind that the trend lately on the federal level has been these extremely short timelines from the application opening to the submission deadline. So it just makes it even more important than ever to start as early as possible. So here on this slide, you're going to see that same timeline from 4 months out to the application deadline. I especially want to point out that I have finalized application components task 1 month out from the application due date. This is a smart idea. We all know that that's not likely to actually happen, but it gives you that runway for any last minute issues that may come up to help avoid that last minute scramble, which might prevent you from submitting altogether or from submitting a competitive application. Basically, the timeline in its entirety illustrates the importance of staying one step ahead in this process instead of running from behind, trying to catch up. Just preparation. That's my whole point of these. Preparation is key. So let's discuss how we go about actually selecting the best fit grants for your organization or your project. So it's important to dwindle down from a long list of grants to choose only the absolute best fit grants. First, you can't possibly apply to all grants. Secondly, that's not recommended. And third, you have a million things to do already. So really consider which grants are the best to put your energy and your focus towards. First, you want to consider the most basic question. Do you meet the eligibility requirements? Consider where the funder is funding geographically, what type of organizations they are funding. That's going to be your basic question number one. Make sure that you are eligible. Consider the timeline until the submission deadline. Do you have months or do you have a week? Obviously, if the deadline is 2 weeks out and you're not prepared at all and it requires a partnership that you have not nailed down yet, that's not going to be a good use of your time. Look at their funding priorities. Do their priorities align with your overarching goal? This step is also a shout out to the importance of reading application guidance. You really want to understand, as Shannon said, this isn't free money, this is an investment. And a lot of times they have stipulations on that money. So it is vitally important that you read that application guidance or the NOFO and understand what are the priorities of this and do they align with our priorities. Obviously, the more it aligns, the more competitive and appealing you're going to look to that funder. And then also consider the award. Will this fund the amount that you want? What is the match requirement? Is it a match requirement that your organization can handle? Those are all things that you should be considering. And then the peripherals, does it require a partnership? If it does, do you have those partnerships in place? Do you have the capacity for the post-award requirements? That's another important thing to look at ahead of time. Some post-award requirements are quite involved, and so you really need to know going in with your eyes wide open what's going to be required of you and if your organization has the capacity of that. And then finally, funder history. It's always a good idea to look at previously funded projects under this grant that you're interested in. See if the organizations are similar, if the projects are similar. The more similarities, the more competitive you're going to be and appealing to the funder. So most of these are logistical concerns. Runway until deadline. Are you eligible? Do you meet the requirements? Where the real wiggle room is, it has to do with point number 3. Figuring out your priorities, whether they're shared with the funder, and developing a project idea to address that. That's really the hardest part and what possibly takes the longest time in this process. Just remember that grant funders have missions, and they accomplish their missions through providing funds to others for activities that align with their goals and objectives. So again, going back to reading that application guidance and making sure that you understand the funder's goals and objectives. Okay, so some, especially on the federal level, you will find some grants that require partnerships, and there are some grants that maybe don't necessarily outright require them, but you really need those partnerships in place to be the most competitive. Keep in mind, especially with federal grants, they want their dollars to reach the most people. So oftentimes a county-wide partnership or a partnership with a police department, with a community-based organization, those may be stronger applications than if you were just applying solo. So if a partnership is required, or if you do choose to bring one on, there are some best practices. Like I said earlier, we always recommend starting the grant process as early as possible. This is going to be especially important when it comes to partnerships. Before reaching out to partners, really utilize your internal team to gain some insight across your organization, to form that holistic view of the project, determine where are the gaps and where can you potentially bring in a partner to fill those gaps. And then obviously involve your partners early. Engage them in discussions surrounding your project's goals and see how those goals align with their goals and how you guys can come together. Include them in project planning and ensure that people on both sides have a voice. So you really want to frame your outreach through the lens of what can we do for you, or what can we accomplish together? And that's ultimately going to foster a more productive and mutually beneficial partnership. As those initial meetings and conversations evolve, continue cultivating the relationship throughout. This is not only going to ensure, obviously, the project's success, but if the collaboration is a successful one, it opens the door for further grant funding, for further partnerships with this organization. And then lastly, you do want to formalize the partnership with a memorandum of understanding, commonly referred to as an MOU, which is a formal statement of a commitment for partnership. This will be a required piece of a grant proposal, so definitely something, if you do have a partnership, to put in your grants document folder. All right, so I will close my piece out by reviewing some tips on creating a competitive grant proposal. So first, Shannon said it, and I'll just say it again because it's really important. Grants fund projects. They do not fund products. Technology and other products requested as part of a grant should always tie back to the project, meaning they are needed to ensure the project is a success, because the funder cares that the project will be a success. This is why a strong need statement is so important. Start with your goal, then figure out what you're going to need to accomplish that goal. Put the project first, and then follow with the product. Third, learn everything you can about the grant before you apply. So I'll say it again, always read the program guidance. Make sure you understand the requirements around the grant as well as what's required in the proposal. As I said before, and Shannon said, grants aren't free money. You just want to make sure that you're going in with eyes wide open and you don't receive any unpleasant surprises later once you've been funded. Use SMART goals while developing your grant proposal. SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, results focused, and time bound. Avoid being vague and instead be clear and direct about how you intend to implement the project, what outcomes will be, and how those outcomes are going to be measured. The more specific you are, the more confidence the funder is going to have in your ability to actually carry this out. And then finally, always get that second set of eyes to look over your application, or even a third set of eyes. This could catch errors, typos, acronyms or abbreviations that might not make sense to outsiders, components that might be missing. Receiving that objective feedback is going to ultimately give your application a better chance of being competitive and successful. So with that, I will pass things over to Emily to discuss the Ingram Micro Grant Services.
Thanks so much, Megan. So my name is Emily Nolan, and I'm the Senior Program Manager for the Grants Program at Ingram Micro. Prior to working at Ingram Micro, I spent almost 20 years in the nonprofit sector, the last 10 specifically focused on grant writing and proposal development, fundraising from private foundations and government sources. The goal of Ingram Micro's grants program is to help our partners and their customers with grant funding for cloud. We provide free grant writing services, including prospect research, grant writing, proposal review, as well as assistance with reporting on any grants awarded. Thanks so much for joining us today. Michael, I'll pass it back to you.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Emily. Thanks for that overview. And to all of our panelists, thanks for sharing all of that great information. Okay, we've got a few minutes for questions here. So let's start out with the first one. I believe this was talking about the JAG program, Shannon. If you're a school district, police department, do you need letters? Before you get into that specific answer, I just want to take a step back and go over some of the things that we've talked about in past grants casts regarding the potential the potential for collaboration, particularly among police departments. As Shannon mentioned, there is a change with each new administration. There's a change in how grants are made, where the priorities are, and kind of how the grants landscape looks generally with each new administration. And in this case, what we're seeing is more of a focus on public safety as a focal point for the delivery of specific community services. And so as this first question kind of gets to, which is, if you're a school district if you're a school district police department, do you need a letter to collaborate with your town on its justice assistance grant application? We're going to see more, I believe, of these law enforcement adjacent types of projects that are bringing in local law enforcement agencies in a more conscious and prioritized way. So when we look at things like school district police departments supporting things like mental health services, some of the things that have been maybe part of the police department's more marginal mission compared with their central activities, we're going to see that start to become more focused on police departments. Some police departments might actually need to beef up their staff in order to accommodate the requests that are going to be coming in from grant seekers all over your community who are now looking at because they're encouraged to, because they're required to, because there's a competitive advantage to doing so, or just because they're starting to see the benefit of bringing police departments in earlier. You're starting to see more of a focus on police departments being a part of a grant application, particularly for those organizations where they're the applicant, but the police department is an integral part of their project proposal. So I just wanted to kind of go off on that little bit of a tangent just to kind of let everyone know that we're, based on what we're seeing in terms of the changing landscape of funding as it relates to going forward for the next 3 years or so, what we're seeing is more of a focus on police departments specifically being integrally involved in a wider range of different types of activities than maybe they have in the past. Even though police departments may have been involved in the delivery of some of those services, we're going to start to see them being brought in more forthrightly and certainly earlier on in the process. Okay, side note over. Let's turn to the question. If you're a school district police department, do you need letters? Shannon?
So thank you for that context, Michael. Basically, adding on to what Michael said, it is never a bad thing to have or develop or maintain a partnership. They will always benefit you. But I think, Jim, I think you might have been asking that in the context of the School Violence Prevention Program or JAG, which I will
Good point.
answer both questions. So for SVPP, if you are a school district police department, you don't necessarily need letters because you're kind of both. You're the school district and the police department. But if an incident, we kind of think in worst case scenarios, if an incident happens at one of your schools, the local police department in which your school falls in their jurisdiction, they will be responding. So you will want to get a letter from them. The School Violence Prevention Program basically requires letter of support from if a project involves coordination with another agency or another organization. So talk to your PD, whether you guys work for the school district. I know a lot of school district police departments work with their local police department, with their SRO. So, maintain that relationship anyway, because it's a great thing to do. And if it was in the context of JAG, you may need letters. It really depends. There are some states who allow school district police departments, and I'm future answering the next question, or campus police departments to apply directly for JAG funding. So you may be eligible to apply directly for JAG funding through your state, or even receive funding as a sub-applicant from your police department. But as Michael said, having those relationships with the police department, with first responders, fire departments, the 911 center, having those relationships is really important just for general public safety.
Thanks, Shannon. Follow on to that. Can a university with a police department apply for the overall campus security using technology? And is there funding for upgrading the technology in the overall campus system?
So for SVPP, which I talked about, campus safety or higher ed cannot apply. The School Violence Prevention Program is for K-12 only. There is a grant at the federal level. It's through the Office on Violence Against Women. It's got a very long title. It's the Grants to Reduce Domestic Violence, Dating Violence, Sexual Assault, and Stalking, I think, on campus. Again, it's through the Office on Violence Against Women. It is not primarily for the technology. It is for establishing, again, maintaining those relationships with the student body, with victim services on campus or outside within the community. But part of it can be used for technology, like blue lights, for example. But it is not technology forward. It's more technology neutral based on, what we talked about earlier. There may also be state funding opportunities. Every once in a while, I'll see one pop up for higher ed campus safety. I think right now Ohio has one. I think, don't quote me on that. California used to have one. New York used to have one. So every once in a while, they will pop up. And as I mentioned, you may be eligible to apply for JAG funding. If you are a sworn department at your university, you may be able to apply to other law enforcement grants because you're a sworn department, or you can partnership, again, kind of like K-12, you can partner with the police department in whose jurisdiction your campus falls. You probably already have an MOU in place with them. And if you are a private university, if you're a private nonprofit university, there are other opportunities as well. So that's my very long-winded way of saying that there are options out there for you. They're just not necessarily going to be, hey, come upgrade all your technology all over campus. Have a nice day. You know, there will be those other factors involved.
Great. And speaking of funding for technology, Emily, you had talked about the Ingram Micro grant services just a second ago, with all the different things that that includes. Grants identification. Actually, I can take us back to that page really quick. Is there what's the best way to reach out to take advantage of that, those services? Is there an email people should use? Is there an ideal way of reaching out to participate in that?
Yeah, they can email me directly, and I'll just put my email address in the chat.
Perfect, thanks. Okay, great. Lots of great free support there. So if you're, no matter what type of grant-seeking organization you have within your own agency, and no matter what level of experience you have with grants, I think this is really good support to tap into. Okay, another question. This one's for Meghan. You mentioned UEIs in your presentation specifically. Can you remind us again what a UEI is? And do I need a UEI for state grants?
Okay, so UEI number, it stands for Unique Entity Identifier. What it is essentially a number that the federal government issues to organizations to actually receive funds from the federal government. So that is something that you would register for through SAM, SAM.gov, SAM like the name SAM.gov. So it is required for federal grants, and sometimes a state will require them for state grants, especially pass-through grants that are federally funded but administered on the state level. It will be a requirement as part of those.
But not necessarily. Okay, got you. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, great. And then another one while I have you here. How do I know when, kind of a basic question, but certainly a relevant one considering the fact that all grants are time sensitive. How do I know when federal grants open?
So the best way to know is through grants.gov. That is the federal website that lists all federal funding opportunities. You can join, you can subscribe to their email that you will get instant notification when grants do open, but that is the absolute best database of grants on the federal level.
Got it. Okay, great. All right, fantastic. Unless there are any further questions, doesn't look like there are any further questions. I want to thank our panelists, Charlie Gonzalez, AI and Public Safety Strategist at Scientific, Emily Nolan, Senior Program Manager for Grants at Ingram Micro, Shannon Day, Senior Grants Development Consultant here at Grants Office, and of course, Meghan Jacobsen, Grants Development Associate here at Grants Office as well. Thanks for sharing your knowledge and insights with us. It's been a great opportunity to sort of hear some of the Grants 101 kind of foundational information, as well as how grants fund technology and then where that technology overlaps in a lot of ways and supports public safety, law enforcement, and tribal projects. And to all of you, thanks for participating in today's session. I hope you found this a valuable use of your time, and we'll look forward to seeing you again on a future webcast. Have a great day, everybody.